welcome to Mail Story. If you enjoy stories, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next ones.
My best friend was destroying my relationships one by one so she could have me to herself. One dinner made her lose everything. My best friend April was standing in my living room with her hands clasped together like she was about to deliver bad news at a funeral, and the first words out of her mouth were about my girlfriend. "I'm so worried about you," she said, her voice soft and careful like she was talking to someone fragile. "I heard something about Caitlin, and I had to come tell you in person because you deserve to know." I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, watching her face as she spoke. She had that look she always got when she was about to drop some bomb on me, all wide eyes and fake concern, and for the first time in 3 years of friendship, something about it made my skin crawl. "What did you hear?" I asked, keeping my voice calm even though my mind was already racing. April took a deep breath like this was so hard for her, like she was doing me some huge favor by being here. "Caitlin's been talking behind your back," she said. "She told some people that you're too controlling, that she feels trapped in the relationship." I didn't want to believe it, but I heard it from someone who was right there when she said it. I watched her eyes as she talked, and that's when I noticed something weird. She kept looking at my phone on the kitchen counter, just quick little glances like she was checking to see if it was going to buzz or light up. Why would she care about my phone? "That doesn't sound like Caitlin," I said slowly, testing her. April nodded with so much understanding, so much sympathy. I know. That's what I thought too, but sometimes people aren't who we think they are. I just don't want you to get hurt." She reached out and touched my arm, and I felt myself pull back just a little. Something was wrong here, and I couldn't figure out what it was, but my gut was screaming at me to pay attention. April had been my closest friend for 3 years. She was the one I called when I had a bad day, the one who always seemed to know exactly what I needed to hear. But right now, standing in my living room with her concerned face and her darting eyes, I felt like I was seeing her clearly for the first time. I thought about the past 6 months, really thought about them, and a pattern started to form in my head. April had warned me about my coworker back in January, said she overheard him making fun of me at a work event. I stopped talking to him after that. Then she told me my cousin was spreading rumors about my finances, saying I was bad with money and always borrowing from family. I cut my cousin off too. A month later, it was my neighbor, who April said had been complaining about me to everyone on the street. Gone. And now Caitlin. Every single person I'd stopped talking to over the past 6 months, every relationship I'd ended, it all traced back to April. She was always the one who heard something, or saw something, or just thought I should know. I never questioned it because why would I? She was my best friend. She was looking out for me, right? "Are you okay?" April asked, tilting her head. "You look like you're somewhere else." I forced a smile. "Just processing. It's a lot to hear, you know?" She nodded again, all sympathy. "I know this is hard, but I'm here for you. I'm always here for you." Those words used to comfort me. Now they felt like a cage closing around me. I thought about my brother Beck and the text he sent me last week. It had been so strange that I almost ignored it, almost wrote it off as some misunderstanding. He'd asked me why I told April he had a gambling problem. His exact words were, "Why would you say that about me to her? I thought we were cool." I had stared at that message for 10 minutes trying to figure out what he was talking about. I never said anything to April about Beck having a gambling problem. I never said anything to anyone about that because it wasn't true. Beck didn't have a gambling problem. He played poker with his friends once a month for like $20. That wasn't a problem, that was a hobby. But April had apparently told him that I said it. And now Beck barely talked to me. I thought he was just busy, just distant for no reason. But that text made it clear. He thought I'd been bad-mouthing him behind his back. The same thing April was now telling me Caitlin was doing. "You're right," I said to April, and I made myself sound grateful. "I'm really glad you told me. I don't know what I'd do without you looking out for me." Her face lit up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's what friends are for. You know I've always got your back." I nodded and smiled back at her, but inside my head everything was shifting. Every helpful warning she'd ever given me looked different now. Every time she'd shown up with bad news about someone in my life, every concerned conversation where she'd convinced me that someone I loved was secretly against me, it all looked different when I lined it up in a row. Either every single person in my life was terrible and only April could see it, or April was the one causing problems and making it look like everyone else was the villain. And only one of those options made sense. "I should probably call Caitlin," I said, watching April's reaction carefully. Her smile flickered for just a second. So fast I almost missed it. "Maybe give it a day," she said quickly. "You don't want to confront her when you're emotional. That never goes well. Just, sit with it for a bit. I'll be here if you need to talk." She wanted me to wait. She didn't want me to call Caitlin right now while she was standing here, where she couldn't control the conversation. That told me everything I needed to know. "You're right," I said again. "I'll wait." April hugged me before she left, one of those long hugs where she held on a little too tight and whispered, "I love you, you know that, right?" I said I loved her too because that's what I was supposed to say. That's what I'd always said. But after she walked out my front door, I stood in my empty living room and felt like I was waking up from a dream I didn't know I was having. I wasn't going to wait. I was going to figure out exactly what April had been doing. And I was going to start with Beck. If she'd been feeding him lies about me, I needed to know exactly what she'd said. April thought I was isolated. She thought I was dependent on her now, that she was the only person I had left. She had no idea that I was about to trace every single lie back to where it started. I grabbed my phone from the counter and texted Beck, "Can we meet tomorrow, coffee? I need to talk to you about something important." His reply came fast. "Fine, but I don't have much to say to you." That hurt, but I understood it now. He thought I'd betrayed him. He didn't know that April was the one holding the knife. Tomorrow I was going to start putting the pieces together, and April wasn't going to see it coming. I sat down at my kitchen table and grabbed a piece of paper, then started writing down names. My coworker, who I stopped having lunch with in January. My cousin, who I hadn't called in 4 months. My neighbor, who used to come over for beers on weekends. Even Beck barely talked to me anymore. Every single one of them had stopped being part of my life after April came to me with some story about what they'd said or done. Each time she was the one who discovered something terrible about them, always at just the right moment to make me doubt them. She thought she had me exactly where she wanted me, isolated and dependent on her for everything. But she had no idea I was about to trace every single lie back to its source. The next morning I walked into the coffee shop 10 minutes early and grabbed a table in the back corner where we could talk without anyone listening in. I watched the door and tried to prepare myself for whatever Beck was going to throw at me, because based on his text, he wasn't coming here to have a nice chat with his brother. When he finally walked through the door, I could see it in his face before he even sat down. His jaw was tight and his eyes were hard, like he was looking at a stranger instead of someone he'd grown up with. He dropped into the chair across from me and didn't even bother with hello. "I don't know why I'm here," he said flatly. "April told me you called me a deadbeat who mooches off the family." The words hit me like a punch to the chest, not because they made me angry, but because now I understood exactly why my brother had been treating me like I didn't exist for the past few months. He thought I'd been talking trash about him to anyone who would listen. "Beck, I never said that," I told him, keeping my voice steady even though everything inside me wanted to shout. "I have never, not once, called you a deadbeat. I don't even think that about you. You have your own place, you have a job, you pay your own bills. Why would I say something like that?" He stared at me with that same cold expression, like he was waiting for me to slip up, waiting for me to prove that April was right about me. "She said you told her at that barbecue last summer. She said you were complaining about how I always show up to family stuff empty-handed and expect everyone else to pay for things." I shook my head slowly. "That never happened. I didn't say any of that. But let me show you something." I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through my messages with April until I found what I was looking for. Then I turned the screen toward Beck so he could read it himself. "Look at this. This is from 3 months ago. April texted me saying that you were the one spreading rumors about me. She said you told people I had money problems and couldn't manage my finances. She warned me to be careful about what I shared with you because you might use it against me." Beck took my phone and read the messages, his forehead creasing as he scrolled through the conversation. I watched his face change as he read, watched the anger slowly shift into something else. Confusion at first, then realization, then a different kind of anger altogether. "She told me the exact opposite," he said quietly. "She came to me and said you were telling people I had a gambling problem and that I was going to drag the whole family down with my bad choices." He looked up at me, and for the first time since he walked in, he didn't look like he hated me. He looked like someone who had just figured out they'd been played for a fool. "I don't even gamble, Randolph. I play cards with my friends once a month for like $20. "I know," I said. "I know you don't have a gambling problem. I never said you did, but April told you I said it, and she told me you were spreading rumors about my finances. She was feeding both of us lies about each other." Beck set my phone down on the table and leaned back in his chair, running his hand over his face like he was trying to process everything at once. "She told me not to trust anything you say," he said, his voice different now, softer, like he was talking more to himself than to me. "She said you'd try to turn me against her if I ever confronted you. She said that's what you do, that you twist things around and make yourself the victim." I felt my stomach clench because that was exactly the kind of thing April would say. She'd built a wall between us before I even had a chance to defend myself. She'd made sure that if Beck ever did talk to me, he'd already be convinced that anything I said was a lie. "Beck, I'm not trying to turn you against anyone. I'm trying to figure out what's been happening to our family. Did you notice that Mom's been weird with me lately? She barely calls anymore, and when we do talk, she sounds like she's being careful about what she says." Beck nodded slowly. "Yeah, I noticed. I thought you two had a fight or something." Then he stopped, and I saw something click behind his eyes. "Wait, April told our parents something too. She mentioned it to me a few weeks ago, said she was worried about how you'd been acting. She said you'd been bad-mouthing Mom and Dad behind their backs, saying they favored me over you growing up and that you resented them for it." Everything suddenly made sense. That's why Mom had been so distant. That's why our last few phone calls had felt so awkward and forced. She thought I'd been saying horrible things about her and Dad. She thought I was harboring some kind of resentment toward them that I'd been sharing with April. But I never said any of that. I loved my parents. I'd never felt like they favored Beck over me. April had invented that whole story and fed it to them, poisoning another relationship, just like she'd poisoned my relationship with Beck, with my coworker, with my cousin, with everyone. "She's been doing this to everyone," I said, and I heard my own voice come out harder than I expected. "Every person I've cut off over the past 6 months, it's because April told me something bad about them. She said my coworker was making fun of me. She said my cousin was spreading rumors. She said my neighbor was complaining about me. And every time I believed her, because she's supposed to be my best friend. But now I'm realizing that she's the only common factor in all of it." Beck was quiet for a moment, staring at the table like he was running through his own memories, checking them against what I was saying. "She did the same thing to me," he finally admitted. "A few months back, she told me that your neighbor had been asking about our family's money situation, like she was fishing for information. I stopped waving at her after that. I thought she was some kind of gossip trying to stir up drama. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about any of this. April had been running the same playbook on everyone, telling each of us different lies about the other people in our lives until we were all isolated and suspicious of each other. She'd been doing it for so long that I couldn't even remember what my relationships looked like before she started whispering in everyone's ear. "We need to compare notes," I said. Like, actually sit down and go through everything she said to both of us. And we need to reach out to the other people she warned us about. My coworker, my cousin, everyone. Because if this pattern holds up, she's been running this same game on all of them. Beck nodded, and I could see the determination settling into his face. I'm in. I want to know exactly how deep this goes. He paused, then looked at me with something like guilt in his eyes. I'm sorry I believed her. I should have talked to you first instead of just shutting you out. I reached across the table and put my hand on his shoulder. Don't apologize. She was good at this. She made sure we wouldn't talk to each other, made sure we'd both think the other one was the problem. But now we know, and that means we can fix it. We spent the next hour at that coffee shop making a list of everyone April had mentioned to either of us over the past year. The list was longer than I expected, and every name on it was someone who had drifted away from one or both of us. April had been running this playbook on everyone we cared about, and she'd been doing it for years. But she thought we'd never compare notes. She thought we'd stay in our separate corners, angry at each other, dependent on her. She was wrong. Beck and I spent the next 2 days calling everyone I'd cut off, and every single one had the same story. April had come to them privately, voice full of concern, sharing something hurtful I supposedly said. She'd been playing puppeteer for years, pulling strings I never saw. My old coworker actually cried when I explained I never called her incompetent. April thought she'd built the perfect web. But now everyone she'd poisoned against me knew the truth and they were angry. Not at me. At her. We planned a small dinner at my place. Everyone she'd lied about, all in one room, and April was getting an invitation. I picked up my phone and stared at April's name in my contacts for a full minute before I made the call. This was the part I'd been dreading, the part where I had to pretend that nothing had changed, that I was still the same guy who trusted her with everything. I took a deep breath and hit the button, and she answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting for me. Hey, I said, and I made my voice sound tired, a little broken, like I was barely holding it together. I'm having a really rough day. Everything just feels like it's falling apart, and I don't know what to do. I just really need my best friend right now. There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear her smiling through the phone. Of course, I'll be there, she said in that sweet voice that used to make me feel safe and supported. Now it made my skin crawl, knowing what I knew about her. You know I'm always here for you. That's what friends are for. Do you want me to come over tonight? I can bring food, we can talk, whatever you need. I closed my eyes and forced myself to keep playing the part. That would be amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you, April. Seriously. You're the only person who's been there for me through everything. I'm so grateful to have you in my life. The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but she ate them up like candy. Aw, you're gonna make me cry, she said with a little laugh. I love you, you know that. I'll always be there for you no matter what. How about Friday night? We can have a nice dinner and just decompress. Friday night was perfect. That was when everyone was coming over. That was when she was going to walk into a room full of people she thought would never speak to each other again. Friday works great, I said. Thank you so much. You're the best. We hung up and I set my phone down on the counter, feeling like I needed a shower after that conversation. Every word she said had sounded so genuine, so caring, but now I could hear the calculation behind it. She loved that I was struggling. She loved that I needed her. That was the whole point of everything she'd done, to make sure I had nowhere else to turn. The next few days were busy with planning. Beck came over to help me set up for the dinner, moving furniture around and making sure there were enough chairs for everyone who was coming. We were in the middle of rearranging the living room when his phone buzzed with a text from our mom. He read it and then stopped what he was doing, his face going through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. You're not going to believe this, he said, looking up at me with his jaw tight. I just asked Mom why she's been so weird with you lately, and she told me something interesting about April. I put down the chair I was carrying. What did she say? Beck shook his head slowly like he was still processing it. Mom said April's been coming around a lot more lately, like showing up to family stuff without being invited, bringing food, offering to help with things around the house. She said April told her that she thinks of our parents as her own family since her own parents are so far away. That didn't sound too bad on the surface, but I could see from Beck's face that there was more. And? I prompted. And Mom said April's been dropping hints. Little comments here and there about how she wishes she could be more involved in family events, how she feels like she's earned a place at the table. And then, this is the part that really got me. Mom said April mentioned that maybe it would be easier for everyone if some people didn't come to certain gatherings. She didn't say your name directly, but she talked about how stressful it is when there's tension in the family, and how sometimes the kindest thing is to give people space. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. She's trying to replace me. She's not just trying to isolate me from everyone, she's trying to take my spot. She wants to be the one at Thanksgiving and Christmas. She wants to be the one Mom calls when she needs help. She's been sliding into my life piece by piece, and I didn't even see it happening. Beck nodded grimly. That's exactly what it sounds like. Mom didn't realize what was happening because April was so subtle about it. She made it seem like she was just being helpful, just being a good friend to the family. But looking at it now, it's obvious. She was positioning herself to be the good one, the reliable one, while making sure everyone thought you were the problem. I ran my hand through my hair and tried to calm down. Getting angry wasn't going to help anyone right now. What I needed to do was focus on Friday. Focus on making sure April finally faced the consequences of everything she'd done. We finished setting up the living room in silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts about just how far April had been willing to go. I was about to head into the kitchen to figure out what food to order when my phone rang. Caitlin's name popped up on the screen, and I felt my heart do a weird little flip. We'd been together for almost a year, and I loved her more than I knew how to say, but things had been off between us lately. She'd seemed distant, almost cold, and I couldn't figure out why. Every time I tried to get close to her, she pulled away. I answered the call. Hey, Caitlin, what's up? There was a long pause before she spoke, and when she did, her voice sounded thick, like she'd been crying. Randolph, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did you tell April that I'm too clingy? Did you say you wanted space from our relationship? The question hit me like a truck. What? No, I never said that. Where is this coming from? Caitlin let out a shaky breath. April came to me about 3 weeks ago. She said she was worried about us, about our relationship. She told me that you'd been confiding in her about how you felt trapped, how I was always texting you and wanting to see you, and it was too much. She said you didn't know how to tell me yourself, so she thought she should give me a heads up so I could back off before you got resentful. I closed my eyes and leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the anger build in my chest all over again. 3 weeks. Caitlin had been hurting for 3 weeks because of something April made up. That explained everything, the distance, the way she'd stopped texting me as much, the way she seemed nervous whenever we hung out like she was afraid of being too much. Caitlin, I never said any of that. I don't feel trapped. I don't think you're too clingy. I love how much you want to be around me. April lied to you. There was a moment of silence, and then I heard Caitlin start to cry on the other end of the line. I've been so confused, she said through her tears. I've been trying so hard to give you space, to not be annoying, and the whole time I thought you were pulling away from me. I thought you didn't want me anymore, but you were too nice to say it. And April, she was so sympathetic about it. She kept checking in on me, asking how I was doing, being my shoulder to cry on. My grip on the phone tightened. Of course April was being supportive. Of course she was checking in. She'd created the problem and then swooped in to be the hero. That was her whole thing. She made people feel bad and then made herself the only source of comfort. She was trying to break us up, I said quietly. She's been doing this to everyone in my life. She tells them lies about me, waits for the relationship to fall apart, and then she's right there to pick up the pieces. She wanted you to think I didn't care about you so that you'd turn to her instead. She wanted to drive a wedge between us so she could have me all to herself. Caitlin's crying got louder. That's so messed up. Why would she do that? I thought she was my friend too. She was always so nice to me, always asking about my day and remembering little details about my life. I thought she genuinely cared. I wished I could reach through the phone and hold her. I know, I thought the same thing. I trusted her more than almost anyone, and she used that trust to destroy every relationship I had. But I'm not going to let her get away with it. I'm having a dinner on Friday, and everyone she's lied to is going to be there. We're going to confront her together. Will you come? Caitlin didn't hesitate. Yes, I'll be there. I want to look her in the face and hear her try to explain why she almost ruined us. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen and thought about everything April had taken from me. Months of closeness with Caitlin, stolen because of lies. My brother, who I'd barely talked to for half a year. My parents, who'd been treating me like a stranger. My coworker and my cousin, and everyone else she'd turned against me. She'd been building a cage around me for years, and I'd helped her do it because I trusted her. But not anymore. Friday was coming, and April had no idea what was waiting for her. I held Caitlin's hand later that night as she sat on my couch, still processing everything April had done to us. 3 weeks of thinking I didn't want her. 3 weeks of April being her shoulder to cry on about our relationship. That's when it clicked in my head like a light turning on. April didn't just want me isolated. She wanted to be me. My friends, my family, my relationship. She was trying to slide into every space I occupied. She'd been studying my life like a script she wanted to perform. The dinner was tomorrow night. Beck confirmed everyone would be there. My coworker, my cousin, Caitlin, my parents. All the people April had systematically tried to steal from me. She had no idea she was walking into the final act of her own show. The morning of the dinner, I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand, and when I picked it up, I saw April's name on the screen with a long text message waiting for me. I rubbed my eyes and read through it, and something about the words made my chest feel tight in a way I wasn't expecting. Good morning. I just wanted to say how grateful I am for our friendship. I know things have been hard lately, but I'm so glad we have each other. Some friendships are just meant to be, you know? Like the universe put us in each other's lives for a reason. I can't wait to see you tonight. You mean so much to me. I sat there in my bed with my phone in my hand, reading those words over and over, and I felt something I didn't want to feel. Sadness. Real, genuine sadness that came from somewhere deep in my gut and spread through my whole body like a cold wave. Because there was a time when I would have read that message and felt nothing but warmth. There was a time when April really was my person, the friend I called at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep, the one who remembered every little detail about my life and always knew exactly what to say. I remembered the first time we met at a party 3 years ago where I didn't know anyone, and she walked up to me with a drink in her hand and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else right now." Same. We'd been inseparable ever since. Or at least I thought we had. I thought what we had was real. And maybe in her own twisted way, she thought it was real too. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling, and for a moment, just one weak moment, I thought about calling the whole thing off. Maybe April wasn't evil. Maybe she was just broken. Maybe she had problems. Deep problems that made her do these things without really understanding how much damage she was causing. Maybe she didn't mean to hurt anyone. Maybe she was just scared of losing people, so scared that she tried to control everything, and it all spiraled out of control before she could stop it. I could almost convince myself of that story. I could almost make myself believe that tonight was too harsh, too cruel, that confronting her in front of everyone would destroy her, and she didn't deserve that. She needed help, not punishment. Right? I actually reached for my phone to text Beck and tell him I was having second thoughts when my phone rang. It was my mom. I answered it without thinking. Hey, Mom. Hi, honey. Her voice sounded careful, the same careful voice she'd been using with me for months, like she was walking on eggshells around me. I just wanted to check in on you. How are you feeling? There was something in the way she asked that question that made me sit up straighter. I'm fine. Why do you ask? A pause. Well, April stopped by the house yesterday. She's such a sweet girl, always bringing over food and asking about you. Anyway, she mentioned something that worried me a little, and I just wanted to talk to you about it. My hand tightened around the phone. What did she say? Another pause, longer this time. She said she thinks you've been struggling. Mentally, I mean. She said you've been acting different lately, suspicious of everyone, pulling away from people who care about you. She thinks maybe you should talk to someone, a professional, you know? She said, and this is her words, not mine, she said you've been dealing with some paranoia about people in your life, like you think everyone's out to get you. She's worried you might be having some kind of breakdown. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, feeling every trace of sadness evaporate from my body like water on a hot pan. In its place was something cold and clear and sharp. Mom, I said slowly. Did April specifically use the word paranoia? Yes, she did. She said she's been noticing it for a while now. How you keep accusing people of things they didn't do, cutting off friends and family for no reason. She said she's tried to help you, but you won't listen, and she thinks you need real help before you push everyone away for good. I closed my eyes and let the reality of what was happening wash over me. April wasn't just lying about me to the people I loved. She was laying the groundwork to have me dismissed completely. She was making sure that when everyone finally did compare notes, when they finally did start questioning her stories, she could point to this conversation and say, see? I tried to warn everyone. He's not well. He's paranoid. You can't trust anything he says. She was trying to destroy my credibility before I even had a chance to defend myself. And she was doing it right now the day before the dinner because some part of her must have sensed that something was wrong. Maybe I wasn't as good at pretending as I thought. Maybe she picked up on something in my voice during our phone call. Whatever the reason, she was making moves, and if I didn't go through with tonight, she would keep making moves until everyone I loved thought I was crazy. Mom, I need you to listen to me, I said, and I kept my voice calm even though everything inside me was screaming. I'm not paranoid. I'm not having a breakdown. April has been lying to you and everyone else in this family for years. She told Beck that I called him a deadbeat. She told you that I've been bad-mouthing you and Dad. She told Caitlin that I thought she was too clingy. None of that is true. She made all of it up. Silence on the other end. I know that sounds crazy, I continued. I know it sounds like exactly what a paranoid person would say, but I have proof. I have texts. I have people who are willing to tell you exactly what April said to them. I'm having a dinner tonight, and I want you to be there. I want you to hear what everyone has to say. And then you can decide for yourself whether I'm paranoid or whether April has been playing all of us this whole time. My mom was quiet for a long moment. Honey, I don't know what to think. April's been so good to this family. She's always there when we need her. Why would she lie about all of this? Because she wants what I have, I said, and saying it out loud made it feel even more true. She wants my family. She wants my friends. She wants my girlfriend. She wants to slide into my life and push me out. And the only way to do that is to make everyone think I'm the problem. Please, Mom. Just come tonight. Give me a chance to show you what's really been going on. Another long pause. Okay, she finally said. I'll be there. But Randolph, if this is some kind of misunderstanding, if April really is just trying to help and you're blowing it out of proportion, we're going to have a serious talk about getting you some support. Fair enough, I said. That's all I'm asking. Just listen. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed and let everything settle in my head. The sadness was gone. The doubt was gone. The tiny voice that had been whispering, maybe she didn't mean it, was silent now, drowned out by the reality of what April had done. She had called my mother the day before the dinner and told her that I was mentally unwell. She had used words like paranoia and breakdown and professional help, not because she cared about me, but because she was building a defense. She knew something was coming. Maybe not exactly what, but something. And her response was to try to make me look crazy before I could say a single word in my own defense. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This wasn't about making April pay for what she'd done. This was about protection. If I didn't go through with tonight, she would keep poisoning everyone against me. She would keep whispering in ears and planting seeds of doubt. She would keep building her case until everyone I loved looked at me with pity instead of trust. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't let that happen. I texted Beck. Mom's coming tonight. April told her I'm paranoid and need professional help. She's trying to make me look crazy before we can expose her. His reply came back in seconds. Of course she is. That's her last move. Make sure everyone knows her playbook so they can see through it. I put my phone down and got out of bed. There was a lot to do before tonight, and I wasn't going to waste another second feeling sorry for the person who was actively trying to destroy my life. April thought she was the smartest person in the room. She thought she had everyone fooled. But tonight, she was going to walk into my living room expecting to find her sad, isolated friend who needed her more than ever. Instead, she was going to find everyone she'd ever lied to, everyone she'd ever manipulated, all sitting together with the same story and the same question. Why? And for once in her life, April wasn't going to be able to talk her way out of it. I stood in my kitchen that night, setting out plates for people I'd almost lost forever. April had called my own mother and planted seeds that I was mentally unwell. That wasn't friendship gone wrong. That was calculated destruction. She was building a case so that when everyone finally compared notes, she could say I was delusional, paranoid, making things up. But she didn't know I had texts, voicemails, a timeline, and 7 people who all had the exact same story. Tomorrow, April would walk into this room expecting to comfort her sad, isolated friend. Instead, she'd face everyone she ever lied to. The morning of the dinner arrived faster than I expected, and I woke up with my stomach in knots thinking about everything that was about to happen. I was in the kitchen making coffee when my phone buzzed on the counter, and when I picked it up and saw April's name, I felt that familiar mix of anger and disgust that had replaced whatever warmth I used to feel when she texted me. I opened the message and read it twice because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "Hey, so excited for tonight. I hope you don't mind, but I'm bringing a surprise guest with me. She's someone I think will really help you, especially with everything you've been going through lately. Trust me, you're going to love her. She's so good at helping people work through their feelings. See you soon." I stared at the screen and felt my heart start beating faster. A surprise guest. Someone who would help me. Someone who was good at helping people work through their feelings. This didn't sound like April bringing a friend to hang out. This sounded like April bringing backup. My mind raced through the possibilities, and none of them were good. What if she was bringing a therapist? What if she was bringing someone who would sit there and nod along while April explained how worried she was about my mental state? What if this whole thing was going to turn into exactly what she'd been telling my mom? An intervention where April got to play the concerned friend while some stranger validated everything she'd been saying about me being paranoid and unstable? I set my phone down and gripped the edge of the counter, trying to slow my breathing. This was bad. This was really bad. April wasn't just going to walk into my dinner and face her accusers. She was going to walk in with ammunition. She was going to have someone on her side. Someone who would make everything I said sound like the ramblings of a person who needed help. I grabbed my phone and called Beck immediately. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice still rough from sleep. "What's wrong?" he asked, because apparently my panic was obvious even through the phone. "April just texted me," I said, and I read him the message word for word. "She's bringing someone tonight. She says it's a surprise guest who's going to help me." "Beck, what if she's bringing someone to back up her story? What if she's planning to make this whole thing look like I'm the crazy one before anyone can say anything?" Beck was quiet for a second, and I could hear him getting out of bed, already moving. "Give me an hour," he said. "I know someone who might know what April's been up to. Let me make some calls and see if I can find out what she's planning." I spent that hour pacing around my apartment like a caged animal, checking my phone every 30 seconds, running through every possible scenario in my head. What if April had been 3 steps ahead of me this whole time? What if she knew about the dinner, knew about everyone coming, and had already figured out how to flip the whole thing around? She was smart. She was so smart that she'd been manipulating everyone in my life for years without anyone noticing. Why would I think I could outsmart her now? When Beck finally called me back, his voice was tight with anger. "I found out what she's doing," he said. "I talked to that guy who used to work with April at her old job, the one she's still friends with on social media. He said April messaged him a few days ago asking if he knew any life coaches or therapists who did home visits. When he asked why, she told him that tonight was going to be an intervention for your mental health. She said you'd been acting erratic and suspicious of everyone, and that your friends and family were getting together to help you see that you needed professional support." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. An intervention. She was actually going to try to turn my own confrontation into an intervention for me. She was going to walk into my living room with some stranger she'd hired to look official, and she was going to try to convince everyone that I was the problem, that everything I'd been saying was just proof of how sick I was. "She's trying to flip the script," I said, and my voice came out harder than I expected. "She knows something's coming. Maybe she doesn't know exactly what, but she knows I've been talking to people, and her defense is to make me look crazy before I can say anything. If she walks in there and starts talking about how this is an intervention, and she's got some professional nodding along with everything she says, people might actually believe her." Beck let out a breath. "So what do we do? Call the whole thing off?" "No," I said, and I felt something shift inside me, something that went from scared to determined in the space of a heartbeat. "No, we don't call it off. We use it. If April wants to walk in there and put on a show, we let her. We let her talk first. We let her bring her surprise guest and give her whole speech about how worried she is and how I need help. We let her dig her own grave as deep as she wants to dig it. And then, when she's done, when she thinks she's won, we present the evidence. Everyone tells their story. We show the texts, the timeline, all of it. And that stranger she brought will get to see exactly who April really is." Beck was quiet for a moment. "That's actually smart. If we interrupt her or try to stop her, she'll just say we're being defensive, that we're proving her point. But if we let her go first, let her say everything she wants to say, and then hit her with the truth, she won't have anywhere to run." "Exactly," I said. "But I need to warn everyone. They need to know what's coming so they don't react too early. They need to stay calm, let April feel like she's in control, and then we drop the hammer." I hung up with Beck and immediately started making calls. Caitlin was first. I told her about April's text, about the surprise guest, about Beck's discovery that April thought tonight was an intervention. Caitlin's voice went cold. "She's really going to try to make you look crazy in front of everyone? After everything she did to us?" "That's her plan," I said. "But here's what I need you to do. When April walks in, don't react. Don't say anything about what she did to you. Let her talk. Let her bring out whoever she's bringing and give her whole speech. The more she says, the worse it's going to look when the truth comes out. Can you do that?" Caitlin took a breath. "Yeah, I can do that. I'll sit there and smile and let her think she's winning, and then I'll tell her exactly what she did to me and watch her face when she realizes she can't lie her way out of it." I called my cousin next, then my old coworker, then my parents. Each conversation was the same. I explained what April was planning, told them to let her speak first, to let her feel like everything was going according to her plan. My mom was the hardest call. She still sounded unsure, still sounded like she was waiting to see which version of events was true. But she agreed to stay quiet at first, to let everything play out before making any judgments. I just want to understand what's happening, she said. I feel like I've been getting different stories from everyone, and I don't know what to believe anymore. That's exactly what April wanted, I told her. She wanted everyone confused. She wanted everyone getting different stories so nobody would trust anybody else. But tonight, you're going to hear the same story from 7 different people, and then you're going to know the truth. By the time I finished making all my calls, it was early afternoon and I felt strangely calm. The panic from this morning was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like confidence. April thought she was walking into a trap I didn't know about. She thought she was going to blindside me with her intervention, and her surprise guest and her concerned friend act, but she had no idea that everyone in that room already knew what she was going to do. She had no idea that we were all going to sit there and let her talk, let her spin her web of lies one more time, and then watch as the whole thing collapsed around her. I spent the rest of the afternoon getting ready, setting out chairs, ordering food, making sure everything looked normal. Beck came over early to help, and we went through the plan one more time. Let her talk first, he said, and I nodded. Let her dig her own grave, I replied, and then we bury her in it. 6 o'clock came. The doorbell rang. I looked around my living room at Beck, Caitlin, my parents, my cousin, my old coworker. All of them silent, all of them ready. April had no idea that the intervention she planned was about to become her own trial. She thought she was walking in to finish me off, to seal the story that I was crazy and she was the only one who truly cared. Instead, she was walking into a room full of witnesses. Every lie she told was documented. Every relationship she poisoned was represented. I took a breath and opened the door. April was standing on my doorstep with that same concerned smile I'd seen 100 times before. And next to her was a woman in her 50s holding a leather folder, dressed like she'd just come from an office. April's eyes swept past me into the living room, taking in all the faces. And for just a second, maybe half a second, I saw something flicker across her expression. Confusion, maybe, or calculation. But then the smile was back, wider now, and she stepped forward with her arms open like she was about to hug me. I stepped back just slightly, not enough to be rude, but enough to keep some space between us. And April's arms dropped to her sides as she walked past me into the living room, with the woman following close behind. Thank you all so much for being here, April said, and her voice had that soft, caring tone that used to make me feel so safe. I know this might seem a little strange, but we're all here because we love Randolph and we want to help him through a really difficult time. This is Dr. Morris. She gestured to the woman with the leather folder. And she specializes in helping people who are going through, well, some struggles with how they see the world around them. April turned to look at me with so much fake concern in her eyes that I almost wanted to laugh. Randolph, sweetie, we've all noticed that you've been pulling away from people lately. You've been saying things about the people who care about you, things that aren't true, and we're worried. We just want to talk, okay? We just want to help you see that maybe, just maybe, you've been looking at things the wrong way. She was good. She was so good at this. If I didn't know what I knew, if I hadn't spent the past week talking to everyone in this room and hearing their stories, I might have actually believed her. But then I watched her eyes move across the room, really taking in who was there. And that's when I saw it happen. Her face changed. It was small at first, just a tiny flicker around her eyes, but then it spread to her whole expression as she realized who was sitting in my living room. My old coworker was there, the one April told me had been making fun of me behind my back. My cousin was there, the one April said was spreading rumors about my money problems. Caitlin was there, holding my hand, the girlfriend April had tried to convince I didn't want anymore. My parents were there, sitting on the couch with expressions that were hard to read. And Beck was there, my brother, the one April had told me was a deadbeat, and had told that I was bad-mouthing him. All of them were looking at April. None of them looked confused or concerned about me. They looked like they were waiting for something. I don't understand, April said slowly. And for the first time since I'd known her, she sounded unsure. Why is everyone... I thought you said you weren't talking to these people anymore. I thought... She stopped herself, but it was too late. She'd already said it. She'd already admitted that she thought I wasn't talking to these people, which meant she knew there was a reason I wouldn't be. Why don't you sit down, April, I said, and I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. There's something we all want to share with you. April didn't move at first. She stood there in the middle of my living room, looking around at all the faces, and I could almost see her brain working, trying to figure out what was happening, trying to find an angle she could use. The woman she'd brought, the one she called Dr. Morris, was looking around the room too, but her expression was different. She looked confused, like she was starting to realize that whatever April had told her about tonight wasn't matching up with what she was seeing. Okay, April finally said, and she lowered herself onto the edge of a chair like she was ready to run at any moment. Okay, let's talk. That's why we're here, right? To talk? I looked around the room at everyone who had come, everyone whose lives April had touched with her lies, and I felt something settle in my chest. This was the moment. This was what everything had been building toward. I want everyone to share their experience, I said. I want April to hear what she said to each of you, and what she said about me, one at a time, starting with Beck. Beck stood up from his chair, and I saw April's eyes dart to him with something that looked almost like fear. April came to me about 6 months ago, Beck said, his voice steady and clear. She told me that Randolph had been calling me a deadbeat behind my back. She said he told her I mooch off the family and that I'm never going to amount to anything. I believed her. I stopped talking to my own brother because of what she said. He paused, and his jaw tightened. But then Randolph showed me texts where April told him the exact opposite. She told him that I was the one spreading rumors about him. She played both of us against each other, and I almost lost my brother because of her lies. April's mouth opened like she was going to say something, but before she could, my cousin stood up. Same thing happened to me, she said. April told me Randolph was talking trash about my family, saying we were always asking him for money and taking advantage of him. I was so hurt I stopped coming to family gatherings. But Randolph never said any of that. April made it up. My old coworker went next. She told Randolph I was making fun of him at work, calling him names behind his back. I never did that. We were friends, and then suddenly he stopped talking to me and I didn't know why. It took me months to figure out that April was the reason. One by one, everyone in the room shared their story. Each one was different in the details, but the pattern was exactly the same. April had come to them privately, full of concern, sharing something hurtful that I had supposedly said. And then she'd come to me with the reverse, telling me that they were the ones who had said something bad about me. She'd been playing puppeteer with all of us, pulling strings we couldn't see, making us dance to a tune only she could hear. I watched April's face as each person spoke, and I saw her mask start to crack. At first, she tried to keep that concerned expression, that soft sympathy she always wore, but with each new story, with each new accusation, it got harder for her to hold it together. Her eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal looking for an exit, and her hands were gripping the arms of her chair so tight her knuckles were white. Wait, April said when my coworker finished talking, and her voice was different now, higher, with an edge of panic underneath it. You're all twisting my words. I was just trying to protect Randolph. I was just trying to help him see who his real friends were. If I said anything that came across wrong, it's because I care about him so much. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was trying to protect him. She looked at me with those wide eyes that used to make me want to trust her with everything. Randolph, you know me. You know I would never do anything to hurt you. These people are twisting what I said to make it sound worse than it was. You have to believe me. Before I could respond, Caitlin stood up and her voice shook with emotion when she spoke. You told me Randolph thought I was too clingy. You told me he wanted space from our relationship but didn't know how to say it. I spent 3 weeks thinking my boyfriend didn't want me anymore, crying myself to sleep, and the whole time you were right there being my shoulder to cry on. You created the problem and then pretended to be my friend while I suffered through it. April's face went pale. I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to what? Caitlin cut her off. Trying to break us up? Trying to make me feel so bad about myself that I'd leave him? What exactly were you trying to do, April? The woman April had brought, the one with the leather folder, had been standing quietly by the door this whole time, watching everything unfold with an expression that had shifted from confusion to something else entirely. She looked at April, then at the room full of people who all had the same story, and I saw her make a decision. Without saying a word, she tucked her folder under her arm, turned around, and walked out of my apartment. The door clicked shut behind her, and April watched her go with a look of pure panic on her face. She was alone now. No backup. No professional to validate her story. Just her and a room full of people she'd spent years lying to. My mom stood up from the couch, and I had never seen her look the way she looked right now. Her face was hard, her eyes were cold, and when she spoke, her voice was steady, but I could hear the anger underneath every word. You came to my house, she said, and April actually flinched. You sat at my kitchen table and told me my son was having a breakdown. You looked me in the eye and said he was paranoid, that he was pushing everyone away, that he needed professional help. You lied about my own child to my face, and I almost believed you. I almost turned my back on my own son because of what you said. April's eyes were wet now, and she shook her head frantically. I was worried about him. I was just worried. Everything I did was because I care about this family. I care about all of you. You don't understand how hard I've worked, how much I've sacrificed. Sacrificed? Beck cut in, his voice sharp. What have you sacrificed? You've been trying to steal our family. You've been trying to push Randolph out so you could take his place. You wanted to be at the dinners and the holidays. You wanted Mom and Dad to think of you as their kid instead of him. Something in April's face changed. The panic was still there, but now there was something else rising up underneath it, something darker and uglier that I'd never seen before. Her jaw clenched and her eyes narrowed, and suddenly she didn't look like my sweet, concerned best friend anymore. She looked like someone I'd never met. You ruined everything, she said, and her voice came out low and hard, nothing like the soft tones she usually used. I did everything for this family. I was there every time someone needed help. I was there when your mom was sick. I was there when your dad needed someone to talk to. I gave everything to you people. And this is how you repay me? Her voice rose with each sentence until she was almost shouting and tears were streaming down her face, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears, furious tears. I made this family better. I made all of you better, and now you're going to sit here and act like I'm the bad guy? Like I'm the one who did something wrong? She turned to face me directly, and the hatred in her eyes made me take a step back. You ruined everything, Randolph. Everything I built, everything I worked for, you destroyed it all because you couldn't just be grateful. You couldn't just appreciate what I did for you. I was the only one who really cared about you, the only one who was really there for you. And this is how you thank me? She grabbed her purse from the floor and stormed toward the door, her whole body shaking with rage. You're all going to regret this, she said, her hand on the doorknob. You're going to realize what you lost when I'm gone. I did everything for this family. Everything. And then she was gone. The door slamming behind her so hard that a picture on the wall rattled. The room was completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. We all just stood there, staring at the door, processing what we'd just witnessed. In the space of 5 minutes, April had gone from my caring, concerned best friend to a screaming stranger who blamed everyone but herself for what she'd done. The mask she'd worn for 3 years had shattered completely, and the person underneath was nothing like the one she'd pretended to be. My mom was the first one to move. She crossed the room and pulled me into a hug so tight it almost hurt. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I doubted you." Beck put his hand on my shoulder, and Caitlin slipped her fingers through mine, and I realized that for the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't alone, and now it was over.